Jimmy Fallon risked everything to tell this story. And across from him sat President Donald Trump, a man who dominates every room he enters, until one of Fallon's carefully timed moves exposed what Trump tried to hide and sent the entire studio into stunned silence. The Tonight Show studio was glowing the way it always did. Bright lights washing over the crowd, the band finishing a loud, upbeat intro, and Jimmy Fallon stepping forward with that familiar, relaxed grin. Trump walked out like he owned the room. He waved slowly, soaking in the applause, chin up, shoulders squared, moving with the confidence of someone used to bending rooms to his will. Fallon greeted him warmly, but Trump barely waited for the welcome to finish before jumping in with a smirk. "Let's keep this friendly tonight, Jimmy," he said, half joking, half warning. "People don't tune in to hear fake outrage. They want winners." Fallon smiled, but didn't laugh. He nodded once, calmly, and replied, "We'll keep it honest. That's what people really stay for." The crowd chuckled. Then Fallon dropped what sounded like a harmless question about Ivanka. The audience laughed, expecting something light, maybe a compliment or a deflection wrapped in humor. Instead, Trump's face tightened, his eyes hardened. He leaned forward, voice cutting through the studio noise. "Why do you people always drag my family into this?" he snapped. "You late-night guys love cheap shots because you can't compete on substance." The room went quiet fast. Fallon didn't interrupt. He let the silence stretch, staring directly at Trump, then said evenly, "You brought your family into the spotlight for years. You sold that image. Don't act surprised when people ask questions about it." A few gasps rippled through the audience. Trump scoffed, shaking his head. "You're just another host chasing clicks. Ratings down, relevance slipping, so you poke at my name to stay alive." Fallon's smile disappeared completely. "Funny you mention ratings," he replied, "because tonight isn't about clicks. It's about control. And I'm not handing you the wheel." Trump shifted in his seat, jaw tightening, fingers tapping hard against the armrest. "You think you're in charge here?" he shot back. "This only works because I'm sitting in this chair." Fallon leaned slightly forward, voice calm but firm. "No, it works because people trust what happens on this stage, and I'm not letting you turn this into another performance." The crowd erupted into nervous applause, mixed with stunned silence. Trump opened his mouth to respond, then stopped, clearly thrown off by the resistance. Trump didn't waste time after that first tense exchange. He leaned forward, rolling his shoulders like a fighter stepping back into the ring, and launched into a long, fast-moving speech without waiting for Fallon to respond. He talked about his presidency, his record-breaking rallies, his business success, and how he had beaten the system more times than anyone else. Every sentence was designed to take up space. He jumped from topic to topic so quickly it was hard to keep up. One moment it was the economy. The next it was the media. Then suddenly, Hollywood elites. It wasn't random. It was strategy. The more he talked, the less room there was for anyone else to speak. Trump glanced at Fallon with a half-smile and said, "This is what people tune in for. Real power. Not comedy sketches and karaoke games." A few nervous laughs came from the crowd, but they were thinner now, weaker. Fallon didn't jump in. He didn't argue. He didn't even nod. He just sat there, hands resting on his desk, eyes locked on Trump, letting the monologue keep going. The silence between Trump's words felt heavy. With no reaction to feed off, Trump talked even more. His voice got louder, his gestures wider, his tone sharper. He started attacking Fallon directly. "You used to be funny," Trump said. "Now you're just another late-night guy trying to survive. You had your moment. I built an empire." The audience shifted in their seats. A few people raised their phones at first, then slowly lowered them as the mood in the room changed. This wasn't entertaining anymore. It was uncomfortable. When Trump finally paused to breathe, Fallon calmly leaned forward and asked a simple question. "Are you done?" The words weren't loud. They weren't aggressive. But they cut through the air. Trump blinked, clearly caught off guard. Fallon followed up immediately. Because this isn't a rally, and it's not your press conference. This is a conversation, the crowd murmured. Trump opened his mouth to jump back in, but Fallon lifted one hand slightly, not in anger, just enough to signal control. We have limited time, Fallon added, glancing briefly at the studio clock, and I decide how it's used. Trump scoffed and tried to interrupt again, talking over Fallon, raising his voice to reclaim momentum. Fallon didn't raise his voice. He didn't match the energy. He simply waited until Trump finished, then repeated calmly, "You don't get to run the clock here." The room went quiet. The band stayed still. The audience stopped laughing altogether. Fallon leaned forward slowly, resting both hands on the desk, his voice calm but sharper than before. He looked directly at Trump and said, "You want to talk about ratings? Let's talk about truth." The room changed instantly. It wasn't loud. There was no dramatic music, no raised voice, but the way he said it made people sit up straighter in their seats. Trump blinked once, clearly not expecting that turn. His confident posture faltered for just a second, enough for the audience to notice. He tried to laugh it off, shaking his head. "Truth?" Trump said. "You late-night guys don't care about truth. You care about headlines." Fallon didn't react to the jab. He just held eye contact, letting the silence stretch again, forcing Trump to sit inside his own words. Then Fallon spoke again, slower this time. "This isn't a normal interview," he said. "I didn't bring you here to trade jokes or play games." The band stayed quiet. The audience barely moved. Fallon continued, "I've been sitting on information for months. Months. I delayed this appearance on purpose. Not for drama. Not for ratings. For verification." A low murmur spread through the crowd. Trump's expression changed immediately. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the cameras, then back to Fallon. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. Fallon didn't answer right away. He reached down, touched the stack of cards on his desk without picking them up, and said, "I'm talking about a timeline. I'm talking about documents. I'm talking about patterns you don't get to talk your way out of." The normal talk show rhythm completely collapsed in that moment. There were no quick jokes, no easy transitions. Fallon wasn't asking short questions anymore. He was setting the frame. "Tonight isn't about performance," he said. "It's about accountability." Trump shifted in his chair, trying to interrupt, but Fallon kept going, voice steady. "You're used to controlling the story by talking louder and longer. That stops here." The audience stayed silent, locked in, barely breathing. You could hear movement in the seats, the faint hum of studio equipment, but no laughter, no applause, just tension. Trump tried to regain footing. He leaned forward and said, "You think you're some kind of investigator now? You're a comedian." Fallon didn't flinch. "Maybe," he replied, "but I know how to ask questions, and I know when people don't want to answer them." The words landed hard. Trump looked away for a split second, then back again, clearly irritated. Fallon pressed further. "I didn't rush this. I didn't guess. I waited. I checked. And I didn't invite you here until I knew what I was holding." Then Fallon didn't reach for cue cards or a monitor. He slowly pulled his phone from his jacket pocket and held it up just enough for Trump to see. "This is why I waited," Fallon said quietly. Without adding drama, he tapped the screen and turned it toward the studio monitor. The clip began to play. It was an old interview, years back, Trump talking about Ivanka in a way that had once been brushed off as awkward humor. At the time, people laughed. Tonight, nobody did. Trump smirked at first and let out a short laugh. "Oh, come on," he said, waving his hand. "That's ancient. Everyone knows it was a joke." Fallon didn't interrupt. He didn't comment. He let the clip finish completely, letting Trump's own words echo through the studio. When the screen went dark, Fallon looked up and asked calmly, "What if it wasn't a joke?" The room froze. Trump's laugh died in his throat. His smile faded, replaced by a tight, defensive stare. Trump leaned back and tried to recover. "You're really reaching now," he said. "Digging up old clips because you've got nothing else?" Fallon shook his head slowly. "That clip didn't resurface by accident," he replied. "It came back because people started connecting timelines, travel records, public absences, private movements." The audience shifted in their seats. Fallon continued, voice steady but deliberate. "When something doesn't line up, people look again. And when they look again, things that were once ignored suddenly matter." Trump's fingers tightened into a loose fist on the armrest. He tried to interrupt, but Fallon kept going. "You're used to controlling how moments are remembered. Tonight, we're re-examining one." The tension thickened. Fallon didn't rush. He let the silence sit heavy before adding, "This clip wasn't chosen for shock value. It was chosen because it sits at the beginning of a pattern." The crowd finally reacted, not with cheers, but with quiet gasps and whispers. Phones came back up, recording again. Trump shook his head, muttering, "This is ridiculous," but his voice lacked the confidence it had earlier. Fallon leaned forward slightly and locked eyes with him. "What's ridiculous," Fallon said, "is pretending context doesn't matter. Words don't disappear just because time passes." The audience could feel the shift. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was preparation meeting resistance, in real time. Fallon didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. Instead, he reached beneath the desk and slowly placed a thick envelope on the table between them. The movement was small, but the effect was immediate. The audience leaned forward. Trump's eyes locked onto the envelope. Fallon slid it closer to the camera and said calmly, "This arrived anonymously. No return address, no press release, just documents." He opened it and pulled out several printed pages. They weren't flashy. No dramatic graphics. Just plain paper with official formatting, medical headings, dates, and stamped sections. Fallon held them up long enough for the cameras to zoom in. "These are hospital records," he said. "They list patient visits, intake notes, and maternity-related appointments tied to a private facility." Trump laughed loudly, shaking his head. "Fake papers. Anyone can print that nonsense," he said, trying to turn it into a joke. A few nervous chuckles followed, but they faded quickly. Fallon didn't react to the mockery. He didn't accuse Trump of anything. Instead, he began reading carefully. "These documents claim a patient registered under an alternate name," he said. "They show repeated visits over several months. They show prenatal-related care. What they do not show is public acknowledgement, media presence, or any public record that would normally exist at that time." He paused and looked at Trump. "I'm not saying what they prove. I'm saying what they claim." That distinction mattered. The room went quiet. Trump leaned forward, voice rising. "You're playing games. You bring trash on national TV and pretend it's evidence." Fallon nodded slowly. "Which is why I didn't bring this on air immediately." He lifted another sheet from the stack. "Before tonight, we tried to verify these records independently," Fallon said. "We contacted multiple institutions connected to this facility. 2 declined to comment. 1 flat-out refused to answer any questions." The audience murmured. Fallon let that sink in. No denial. No confirmation. Just silence. Trump scoffed again, louder now. "Because they don't want to deal with your circus," he snapped. Fallon remained calm. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe silence is easier than lying." The tension tightened. Trump's face reddened slightly. His hands moved as he spoke, chopping the air, trying to regain control through volume. Fallon stayed still. He placed the documents back on the desk neatly, almost respectfully. "I'm not here to label this," Fallon said. "I'm here to show that something exists that people tried to bury, and that now sits in public view." The audience sat frozen. No laughter, no applause, just the sound of cameras and quiet breathing. Trump opened his mouth to interrupt again, but Fallon continued calmly. "When powerful people say something isn't real, the first question shouldn't be, Who said it? It should be, why doesn't anyone want to answer it? That line landed hard. The room felt heavier than before. Suspicion had just turned into substance. Fallon didn't rush the next move. He didn't raise the envelope again or repeat the documents. Instead, he turned slightly toward the side of the stage and said calmly, "Paper can be questioned. People are harder to dismiss." A quiet door opened behind the curtain, and a former Trump Organization staffer stepped into the light. The audience reacted immediately, a low wave of whispers rolling across the studio. The staffer looked nervous but steady, hands clasped in front, eyes fixed on Fallon instead of Trump. Fallon didn't accuse. He simply asked, "Tell us what you were instructed to do." The staffer took a breath and said, "I was ordered to deliver prenatal vitamins to Ivanka's apartment, multiple times." The instruction came directly from Mr. Trump. A sharp gasp rippled through the crowd. Trump shook his head, muttering, "This is insane." But Fallon raised a hand slightly, not to silence him aggressively, just enough to keep the moment focused. Fallon didn't argue with the witness. He didn't dramatize the claim. He asked follow-up questions slowly, almost gently. How often? Over what time period? Who gave the final approval? Each answer landed heavier than the last. Then Fallon connected the dots out loud. "Those deliveries line up with Ivanka's 9-month modeling absence in Europe," he said. "The same stretch of time when she disappeared from public appearances." The audience fell into a deep silence. No laughter, no chatter, just tension. Trump leaned forward, voice rising. "People take vitamins for all kinds of reasons," he snapped. Fallon didn't respond to the tone. He looked back at the witness and asked one final question. "Were these normal office errands?" The staffers shook their head slowly. "No, they were treated as private and urgent." That single word, urgent, hung in the air like smoke. Before Trump could jump in again, Fallon turned to the other side of the stage. "There's one more person," he said quietly. Ivanka's former assistant stepped forward, visibly uncomfortable, eyes darting toward Trump and then back to Fallon. The audience reacted again, louder this time, a mix of shock and disbelief. Fallon spoke softly. "You signed confidentiality agreements connected to family matters, correct?" The assistant nodded. "Yes." Fallon followed up, calm and precise. "Those agreements were tied specifically to the period around Barron's birth?" After a long pause, the assistant answered, "Yes." The studio froze. Trump exploded, raising his voice, calling it a setup, calling it a circus. Fallon didn't match the energy. He didn't shout back. He simply looked at the assistant again and asked, "Were you instructed to keep certain details from ever becoming public?" The assistant swallowed and said quietly, "Yes." Fallon stood up from behind the desk for the first time that night and walked toward the large screen beside the stage. The movement alone changed the energy in the room. He wasn't hosting anymore. He was presenting. With a small remote in his hand, he brought up a simple timeline. No flashy graphics, no dramatic colors. Just dates, locations, and short labels. "Let's slow this down," Fallon said, "because fast talk is how details disappear." He pointed to Ivanka's departure for Europe. Then he tapped the screen again, revealing a cluster of medical appointment dates from the hospital records. Another click showed Trump's off-mic whisper from years ago, the caption frozen on screen, "She's mine, in every way." The audience reacted with a low, unsettled murmur. Fallon didn't rush. He layered the information slowly. "These dates overlap," he said. "Not once, not twice, repeatedly." Trump tried to interrupt, raising his voice, calling it manipulation, calling it a fake narrative. Fallon didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on the screen and said calmly, "You'll get your turn. Right now, we're looking at facts." Fallon clicked again and brought up the Swiss clinic documents, appointment logs, registration under an alternate name, medical notes matching the same window of time when Ivanka was absent from public events. "This isn't one document," Fallon said. "It's a sequence." He traced the timeline with his finger, connecting Europe travel dates to clinic visits, then to the delivery window that aligned with Barron's birth period. The audience sat frozen, watching the story take shape in real time. Trump leaned forward again, voice louder now, sharper, desperate to break the flow. "You're twisting numbers," he snapped. "Anyone can line up dates and make a story." Fallon finally turned toward him. His voice stayed steady. "I didn't create this sequence," he said. "I organized it." Then he faced the audience again and paused. The silence stretched so long it felt uncomfortable. Cameras zoomed in. Even the band members stopped moving. Fallon took a breath and delivered the line slowly, deliberately. Individually, these mean nothing. Together, they mean everything. The words hit harder than any accusation could have. He let them hang in the air. No music, no applause, no laughter, just wait. Then he continued, "A joke becomes context. Travel becomes absence. Absence becomes pattern. Pattern becomes question." Trump tried to jump in again, but Fallon raised one hand calmly. "Not yet," he said. "You've talked all night. Let the timeline speak." The audience watched as Fallon stepped back from the screen and returned to his desk, the evidence still glowing behind him. Trump finally snapped. His voice rose, sharp and fast, cutting through the studio as he accused Fallon of setting a trap, of staging lies, of trying to destroy his name for attention. He pointed, leaned forward, spoke over the air, trying to reclaim control with volume and force. Fallon didn't raise his voice once. He didn't interrupt. He didn't argue. He waited, hands resting on the desk, eyes steady, letting Trump burn through his own momentum. The audience shifted quietly, not cheering, not clapping, just watching the balance of power tilt without a sound. Then Fallon spoke one sentence, slow and clear. "If this is false, show the truth." Trump opened his mouth, but no document came out, no timeline, no proof, only anger. When the cameras cut, Trump stood up stiffly, jaw tight, eyes burning with frustration, leaving the stage without another word. Within hours, he lashed out publicly, calling Fallon irrelevant, threatening lawsuits, dismissing the entire night as fake. But the media didn't focus on his insults. They focused on Fallon's method, the calm pacing, the timeline, the evidence-first approach that never needed theatrics. Analysts replayed the pauses, the silence, the moments where Trump talked himself into a corner. The story stopped being about accusations and became about strategy, about how patience outlasts volume, about how evidence reshapes power. Late that night, Fallon stood alone on the empty stage, lights dimmed, desk untouched, cue cards still stacked where they had been all night. No applause, no music, just quiet. And that quiet said more than any standing ovation ever could. If this story made you pause, think, or see power differently, don't let the conversation end here. Subscribe now and stay with us for more real-time breakdowns of moments where control is challenged and truth changes the room. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next clash. Your support keeps these stories coming.